My music, how can we help you today?
Hi, I was wondering, does your location sell ukuleles?
Yes, we do.
I'm part of an organization that is trying to get stores to agree to stop selling ukuleles to millennials.
Okay. Why?
I view it as an issue of public safety. It's kind of like gun control, like, you have to have common sense laws in place to make sure that people aren't hurting themselves, and I just feel like millennials are hurting themselves with the ukulele.
Okay, goodbye.
Fuck.
RW Music, this is Rachel.
Hi, I was just calling to ask if you sell ukuleles at your store.
We do.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm actually part of an organization that is trying to get businesses to agree to stop selling ukuleles to millennials.
Okay.
I just feel like they're making a lot of music that is frankly dangerous to public health, which is why I think this is an issue that really needs to be handled on a systemic level.
So obviously that's not gonna happen.
Damn it.
What's going on? It's Logan from Blue Rivers.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going pretty good.
Great. I was just calling to ask if your store sells ukuleles.
We do.
Cool. So I'm a part of an organization that is trying to get music stores to agree to stop selling ukuleles to millennials. I kind of view this as like a public safety sort of issue, so I was just wondering if I could get a verbal commitment from you that you'll stop selling them.
You know, man, I'm not the owner of this store, but I think that this is probably the best thing I've heard in my entire life. I'm going to let you talk to Steve about this. He'll get a kick out of it. Steve, may I help you?
Hi, I'm just a part of an organization that is trying to get music stores to stop selling ukuleles to millennials.
Stop selling ukuleles to millennials?
Yes.
Why would you do that?
I just believe that they've been making just too much bad music, and I just feel like we need to put a stop to it.
Is this a buddy of yours that's joking me? Brother, are you being serious?
Yes.
Seriously, are you being serious?
Yes, this is 100% serious.
Okay, no, man, we sell ukuleles, so therefore that's our bread and butter, so no, I won't stop selling to millennials.
Millennials have gone too far. They refuse to stop making ukulele covers of I'm Yours by Jason Mraz while wearing a fedora. This song came out 13 years ago, but the millennials just won't stop. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, come on, Mr. Beard, you're being a little bit unfair. Maybe it's a tad cringy, but the millennials aren't hurting anyone. But little do you know, every time a white millennial plays the ukulele, it's a gateway drug, pulling us closer and closer to the inevitable conclusion of their millennial brain rot. The absolute abomination we'll be looking at today. What happens when you give a ukulele to a millennial woman who sees J.K. Rowling as the second coming of Christ? You get the Pronouns Song. This is Vanessa Vokey. Vanessa is what you call a TERF, a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. However, I would not consider Vanessa a feminist. Being a feminist means working to dismantle the patriarchy, working to improve the material conditions of women, and working to achieve systemic equality between all sexes and genders. However, 34 out of the 46 videos on Vanessa's channel are dedicated to shitting on trans people. Rather than focus on criticizing the men who are actively oppressing women, Vanessa has decided to dedicate her entire life to oppressing trans people, a group that is even more marginalized than cis women. When 75% of your content is dedicated to talking about trans women, that is not feminism. That is an obsession. Like, Get your fucking priorities straight. The only time this girl talks about making life better for women is by talking about making life worse for trans women. Even if you think that trans women are actually men, trans women still face incredibly high rates of violence, sexual assault, and suicide. So why not try to learn to, I don't know, coexist with them and make life better for everyone? The answer is because bigotry always requires an enemy, and Vanessa's enemy of choice is trans women. She will cherry pick any example of a trans woman who's a bad person and use this to prove that all trans women are bad people. This is exactly what racist people do, when they cherry pick one person from a certain race doing something bad and use that as proof that everyone of that race is a bad person. Also, Vanessa has said that she agrees that women's natural role is to be a homemaker. Forcing women into these traditional roles is the opposite of feminism, and she is clearly trying to pander to transphobic conservative men while also claiming to somehow be a radical feminist. In my opinion, Vanessa is not a TERF, she is a TERB, a trans-exclusionary radical bigot. But the problem is, TERFs feed off of being called a bigot. Every time you call one of them a bigot, it fills up their rage tank, like the fucking scare tanks from Monsters, Inc. They're like religious martyrs, and every time you call them a bigot, it just reaffirms in their head that they're doing exactly what their goddess J.K. Rowling called them to do. They have the exact same persecution complex as Christians, like the ones at the Westboro Baptist Church. When you call these Christians out for their homophobia, they'll say that you're just calling them out because you hate God. And when you call TERFs out for their transphobia, they'll say that you're just calling them out because you hate women. If you criticize them for how they're not making life better for anyone, they're just making life worse for trans women, they will label you a misogynist and say that men don't get to have an opinion on feminism. Even though Vanessa has shared the opinions of transphobic men on her account, so when Vanessa says men don't get to have an opinion on feminism, what she really means is men who disagree with me don't get to have an opinion on feminism. Vanessa has even said that calling her a bigot is a slur against her. Slurs are insults based on immutable characteristics like skin color or sexuality. Calling you a bigot is not insulting you for who you are, it's insulting you for your opinions. Calling a homophobic person a homophobe is not a slur. Calling a racist person a racist is not a slur. And calling a TERF a bigot is not a slur. Now, I will actually agree that certain trans issues don't have easy solutions. Like, for example, should sports be segregated by gender or by sex? Or should prisons be segregated by gender or by sex? Let's look at the example of prisons. Putting trans women into men's prisons puts them at a greatly increased risk of violence against them. But I do acknowledge that some women in women's prisons aren't comfortable having people with penises in their female-only spaces. However, in the ideal world that Vanessa wants, trans men like this man would be put into women's prisons, and most women who aren't TERFs would not be comfortable with trans men in their spaces. TERFs like Vanessa are afraid of having trans women in their prisons because they're afraid that trans women will attack them. However, having a penis doesn't make someone inherently more violent. The reason men are statistically more violent than women is because of patriarchal socialization. Men are socialized to be more violent. Saying that people with penises are inherently more dangerous than people with vaginas because of their biology is a theory called biological essentialism, and this theory is backed by just as much scientific evidence as theories like phrenology and eugenics. No scientific evidence. In my opinion, the benefit of saving trans women from violence in men's prisons and not forcing trans men into women's prisons outweighs the cost of making some TERFs uncomfortable because there are people with penises in their space. Also, it violates the privacy and bodily autonomy of trans women to force them to disclose what genitalia they have to TERFs just because TERFs don't want people with penises in their spaces. In TERFs' perfect utopia, every single person would be forced to disclose what genitalia they have to every other person in order to keep TERFs safe. Forcing everyone to violate their own privacy and bodily autonomy doesn't sound like keeping people safe to me, but what would I know? I'm not a TERF. Vanessa would say that I clearly have this opinion because I'm a male and I'm prioritizing the needs of other males, but I just see this issue from the perspective of trying to find the best possible outcome that leads to the greatest amount of people feeling comfortable and keeps the rates of violence as low as possible. Because trans women are much more likely to be the victims of violence from men than they are to commit violence against other women. When it comes to issues like sports or prisons, unfortunately, there is no perfect outcome that's going to make every single person happy. We have to just go with the best possible outcome. I don't really love talking about my own gender because, to me, gender is kind of a private thing and I don't really like people on the internet commenting on my gender, but I personally identify as non-binary, which TERFs consider a made-up gender created for the purpose of preying on women. However, I recognize that in many ways I still benefit from male privilege because the majority of people see me as a man, so I think it's super important for me to do whatever I can to help improve the lives of women. But all I have to do is say that non-binary people exist and that trans women are women, and Vanessa will hate me. Well, you know, even if Vanessa hates me, I think it's always important to take the high road and to respond to hate with love, and to treat her with the respect that she refuses to treat me with. I'm just kidding. Let's take a shit all over her terrible fucking song. Are you tired of setting unrealistic New Year's resolutions for yourself? Do you tell yourself every year that this will finally be the year that you break your ukulele addiction, but you inevitably end up relapsing and playing covers of Ingrid Michaelson songs again? Well, this year, give yourself a more attainable goal by regaining control over your food choices, by getting incredibly fresh, healthy, easy-to-prepare meals delivered from today's sponsor, HelloFresh. HelloFresh has an insane number of recipes to choose from, and they have more 5-star reviews than any other meal kit, so you always know you're gonna get something delicious. Today, me and my girlfriend prepared these burgers with insanely flavorful balsamic onion jam and these deliciously seasoned potato wedges. It has been so much fun getting to improve my cooking skills with her, with none of the stress, because HelloFresh sends you pre-proportioned ingredients so you never have to worry about wasting money on excess food. HelloFresh cuts down on food waste by at least 25% compared to grocery shopping. So go to HelloFresh.com and use code MrBeard16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. That's HelloFresh.com, code MrBeard16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 surprise gifts. Thanks again, HelloFresh. So, the beautiful song that Vanessa wrote that we'll be responding to today is called the Pronouns Song. Vanessa kinda reminds me of that vegan teacher because they both play the ukulele and they both take valid beliefs and turn them into bullshit. Veganism is a totally valid belief. Comparing the slaughter of animals to the Holocaust is not valid. Feminism is a totally valid belief. Calling trans women pedophiles is not valid. For this song, Vanessa ripped off the chords from I'm Yours, C, G, A minor, F, which also happened to be the easiest possible chords to play on the ukulele. In my opinion, Vanessa purposefully wrote the worst song possible because when she puts our ears in pain, it forces us to empathize with how she feels when she looks at trans people.
Pronouns are rohypnol because they try to numb your senses.
Pronouns are rohypnol. So, rohypnol is the scientific name for roofies. So, according to her, I guess whenever I say pronouns like we or it or you, that will cause me to fall asleep, so I've got to be really careful when I say pronouns. I wish I knew that when I'm having trouble falling asleep at night, all I have to do is say they, them a few times and that'll cause me to pass out. I guess what she's trying to say is that when you use someone's preferred pronouns, it causes you to let your guard down and allows the evil trans people to attack you more easily. Trans people are actually 4 times more likely to be the victims of violent crimes than cis people, but obviously that doesn't fit her narrative.
'Cause if you can't tell it's a dude in a dress, then you must need contact lenses.
I just don't understand why you care so much. I just think gender is a social construct, and people should have the freedom to identify however they want, wear whatever they want, and do whatever they want to with their bodies. End of discussion. Not that complicated. And your narrative that trans people are predators is pretty ironic when you're putting random trans people on blast for doing absolutely nothing wrong. Like, this person is just trying to live their life, and now they have to be subjected to being shown in your shitty millennial Jason Mraz ripoff song just simply for existing. Seems like you're the one who's being predatory here.
'Cause lesbians don't have penises. There's no such thing as a girl dick.
Look, I understand why TERFs are protective of terms like lesbian and girl. Because for centuries, women have been oppressed, so feminists have taken pride in their oppressed identities. People made them feel like they should be ashamed of being girls or ashamed of being lesbians, but they fought back and said, no, we're proud of being girls. And now they feel like they're under attack because if anyone can identify as a girl and anyone can identify as a lesbian, it makes them feel like these identities that they've fought for against oppression are being devalued. But this is just not the case. Your identity as a lesbian is still just as valid and just as valuable, even if someone with a penis also identifies as a lesbian. Look, if you are a lesbian, and to you, that means you will never find a penis attractive, I think that is perfectly valid. But attacking other lesbians who do find the penises of trans women attractive accomplishes nothing.
These fetishists just won't back off.
Fetishists? What the hell does identifying with a different gender than you were assigned at birth have to do with fetishes? The idea that the reason many trans women want female bodies is because they fetishize them is insanely fucking stupid and not based on any sort of scientific evidence. It couldn't be that that's just the body they feel most comfortable in. No, it has to be a sick, perverted fetish. And even if one of the reasons they're wanting to change their body is so they feel more attractive, that's not a bad thing. People do that all the time. You made a video attacking fat people, so I would assume that you would approve of a fat person losing weight because they want to feel more attractive. But if a trans woman wants to change their body so they feel more attractive, that's wrong for some reason and it's a fetish. The idea that the reason trans women are trans is because they fetishize their own bodies is based on a debunked psychological theory called autogynephilia. You should check out ContraPoint's video on this topic if you want to learn more.
I suspect they all are porn sick.
You suspect they're all porn sick? What the fuck does porn have to do with being transgender? I agree that watching porn can give people an unrealistic and toxic view of sex, and that the porn industry is one of the most exploitative industries in the world, but this has literally nothing to do with trans people. You're just trying to pull random connections out of your ass to demonize trans people. Like, well, I hate trans people, and I hate porn, so trans people must love porn.
These adult men believe they're girls, but what does that really mean?
Okay, I think the one thing that we can both agree on is that picture is cringe. I've heard that, like, age regression can sometimes be a coping mechanism or something, but I will always think that adults dressing like children is cringe. Sorry. But again, this has nothing to do with trans people. Just because you found a picture of some random trans person doing that doesn't prove that there's any sort of trend of trans people dressing up like children. If I show this picture of Belle Delphine dressing up like a child, does that prove that cis women like dressing up like children? Of course not.
Depictions of females raped and abused on Pornhub's most watched video streams.
What does that have to do with trans people? I agree that Pornhub is a horrible website that has contributed to the abuse of countless women, but what does that have to do with someone identifying as a different gender? Do you think that trans people are like Pornhub's biggest fans or something? Because the people who run the porn industry are old cis men, not trans people. Again, these two things are completely unrelated. You claim to be against bigotry, but one of the literal definitions of bigotry is blaming a group of people for something they had nothing to do with.
Because female is not an identity you can put on when it's pleasing.
You're right. Female isn't an identity. It's a biological sex. But woman is an identity. And I know your response will be, well, the dictionary defines woman as an adult human female, so female and woman are the same thing. This, of course, ignores how language is constantly changing and evolving to fit the advancements we've made in the fields of biology and sociology. Sex is a biological concept. Gender is a sociological concept. We have a much better understanding of gender identity now than we did when the word woman was first put into the dictionary. But look, I don't even care. If you want to personally define the word woman as an adult human female, honestly, go for it. What I'm not okay with is you forcing your definition of the word woman onto other people and discriminating against people who follow a different definition of a word than you do. And because I know your TERF talking points, the next thing you would say is, well, if a woman isn't an adult human female, then what is a woman? Woman is a gender identity at one binary end of the gender spectrum opposite man. Asking what is a woman is like asking what is the color red. Well, the color red is defined as a color on the color spectrum, next to orange and opposite violet. The color red is defined in relation to other colors, just how woman is defined in relation to other genders. People love to use the what is a woman question as a gotcha question because it can be very difficult to exactly define something that exists on a spectrum. TERFs want to completely ignore the concept of gender because it's a social construct, but just because something is a social construct doesn't mean that it's not real. For example, the concept of countries is a social construct. America is a social construct. But would you ever say that America doesn't exist because it's a social construct? Of course not. Also, the English language is a social construct. But for some reason, you seem to deeply care about the definition of the word woman, even though the entire English language is just as socially constructed as the concept of being a woman. We are all in agreement that being a female means you have two X chromosomes. If you find pride in being a female, great for you, but you can't force everyone else to completely disregard the concept of gender, a concept that has existed for centuries around the world, just because you personally aren't comfortable with it. Whether you like it or not, social constructs exist. You don't get to say the English language doesn't exist because it's a social construct and I don't like it. For myself personally, I actually also don't love gender, which is why I identify as non-binary, because I don't want to identify with any specific gender. But the difference between you and me is I would never try to force someone else to get rid of their gender because I don't personally like gender. There is actually a term for people like you who don't identify with gender but do identify with their sex. The term is agender female, a genderless female. However, I know that you would never identify as agender because identifying as agender means acknowledging that gender exists, something you refuse to do. And one more thing, TERFs are usually white women because being a TERF means rejecting all of the non-Western cultures who have recognized other gender identities for centuries. So, in a way, being a TERF is actually an extension of white supremacy. So, if you don't want to have a gender and you want to identify as an adult human female, that is absolutely 100% valid. But gender still exists, and you don't get to force other people to not have genders.
It's the cycle of the moon and tides, the life-giving and the bleeding.
If you find pride in the fact that you bleed and that your menstrual cycle matches up with the moon, that is perfectly valid. I agree that if someone tells you that you shouldn't be proud of how you bleed, I will be right there with you telling that person to fuck off. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening is you're telling people who don't bleed that they don't get to feel pride in their gender identity.
Do not call us vulva owners.
Okay, I won't. I feel like that's kind of a weird thing to call anyone.
Babies are not fed by our chests.
If you want to say that babies are fed from your breasts, that's great. If you want to say they're fed from your chest, that's great too. If you want to say they're fed from your fucking mammary glands, then go for it. These are all technically correct. However you personally want to say that you feed your babies is totally valid. Just don't force that onto other people.
And stop sexualizing the function of breasts.
I agree that breasts are overly sexualized. The only reason that breasts are sexualized is because of social conditioning, and I think a lot of trans people agree with me. You can't just take a random tweet from a random trans person and act like this is what all trans people think. This would be like me taking a random tweet from a random woman who supports conversion therapy and saying that this proves all women support conversion therapy. By the way, the woman who supports conversion therapy is Vanessa. Big surprise there. I am not surprised that you support a form of therapy that has been proven to not work just because you blindly hate trans people so much.
Younger gays are being told that they were born in the wrong body.
In my opinion, there's not really a such thing as a wrong body and a right body. Everyone is just born with the bodies they're born with, and then people can change their bodies however they want so that they feel more comfortable in their bodies, because their body, their choice, a concept I would hope Vanessa would agree with as a feminist.
Only perverts lie to kids about sex and human anatomy.
There are no lies about human anatomy on this chart. Most of this chart deals with sociology, not anatomy. Gender identity, social. Gender expression, social. Sex assigned at birth, anatomy. Physically attracted to can be social or anatomy, and emotionally attracted to is usually social. Your sex assigned at birth is either male, female, or intersex, so where exactly on this chart are they lying about anatomy?
'Cause grooming is what predators do. They stalk their unwitting prey.
See, now this is just unacceptable. You are not going to sit here and accuse trans people of being groomers with no fucking evidence. Validating trans people when they experience gender dysphoria is not grooming them. How the fuck do you come to the conclusion that validating someone's gender identity means you're grooming them for sex? Fuck you.
Maps are openly promoting their sickness on Twitter and YouTube every single day.
Pedophiles have nothing to do with trans people. The only people who support being attracted to minors as a legitimate sexuality are pedophiles. Pedophilia is never valid, and I have never met a single trans person who thinks that pedophilia is valid. There is zero correlation between being trans and being a pedophile. Also, this pedophile that you're showing a picture of isn't trans. He is actually a transphobe just like you.
I don't think you can say, oh, well, for sure, there's no such thing as a trans person. They just need to be like changed a little bit when they're a child.
I'm pretty
right?
sure.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
You're pretty sure.
I feel very sure.
So, using your own logic, I could say that, well, because this transphobe is a pedophile, that means all transphobes are pedophiles. And since you, Vanessa, are transphobic, that means you are a pedophile. Obviously, this train of logic is completely ridiculous, but it's the exact same logic you use to claim that trans people are pedophiles.
Share this song with all your friends, especially the one with his dick tucked.
So basically, she's saying to send this song to a trans woman to make them feel horrible about themselves because Vanessa called them predators and pedophiles. If you send this song to a trans woman, that would absolutely be harassment. But according to Vanessa, whenever people call her out on her bigotry, that is the real harassment and the real misogyny. Great logic, Vanessa. I am so sympathetic to all the oppression you face because of your transphobia. Aw, look at how proud of herself she is. Great job, Vanessa. I'm sure this song will really help advance feminism and improve the lives of so many women. As I'm sure we can all agree by now, millennials like Vanessa need to be completely banned from playing the ukulele, but thankfully, I'm not a millennial. I am Gen Z, so I can give this TERF a taste of her own medicine. TERFs are fucking cancer, they ruin feminism. You can support women without being a bigot. So stop spreading your bullshit while playing ukulele. Stealing Jason Mraz's chords is not going to persuade me. You say you support women, but ignore trans oppression. Well, when you sing, it oppresses my ears, so take some singing lessons. Every TERF is a pedophile, is what I'd say if I was like you. Making claims with no evidence is what fucking bigots do. You call it oppression when we give criticism. Calling you a bigot does not make you a victim. You call trans women predators. Well, the real predator is you, preying on the fears of all the women who have been abused. You call yourself a feminist while pandering to conservative men. You must hate social constructs 'cause you can't construct yourself any friends. No one fucking likes you, so stop with the transphobic stunts. Send this song to your favorite TERF, especially the one who is a massively empowered woman. I hope you all enjoyed the video. It has definitely been very discouraging lately to see how rampant transphobia is, and I hope that maybe something I said in this video will help give you the tools to debunk some of the common transphobic things that people say. Vanessa clearly approves of harassment and bullying and slander when it comes to trans women, but I would ask you to please not go harass Vanessa. The only way to really stop TERFs is to pick apart how fucking stupid and bigoted their beliefs are. There is still so much transphobia in the world, but hopefully we're slowly moving towards progress, and maybe in another 50 to 100 years, all this shit will be a thing of the past. Also, don't forget to check out my Patreon if you happen to want to support me on there, and I've been starting to do some live streams on this channel, so stay on the lookout for those. Other than that, keep fighting the good fight, and I'll see you in the next one.